live nationwide and streaming live at lesliemarshallshow.com. Call in with your thoughts at 888-6-LESLIE.
Here to set you free. Happy Friday and welcome back to the only true democracy in talk. I'm your host, Leslie Marshall. I'm here in sunny today, Southern California. You know I'm in Cali because I have an In-N-Out Burger Diet Coke. My kids begged me for In-N-Out Burger for lunch today. But not in LA. We're going to talk to somebody in the DC area. But first, want to thank everybody tuning in, watching us on Twitter's Periscope, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, LinkedIn Live, listening to us on radio, on stream, on podcast. We appreciate you listening or watching the show any way you get it. Joining us today is Greg Regan. Greg is president of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO. Now, if you don't know them, well, you certainly should. I think everybody knows the AFL-CIO. They're a labor organization, but I don't know if you all know that they consist of 33 unions. And those unions together represent workers in all areas of transportation. Now, TTD focuses on federal legislation, regulatory matters, and policy issues that impact transportation workers. Check out their website. Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO is ttd.org. And on Twitter, please follow them there at TTDA AFL-CIO, TTD AFL-CIO on Twitter. Greg, thank you for joining us today. There in the inside the Beltway on your beautiful porch on a beautiful day where we hear the birds. It's good to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time on this Friday.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
I want to talk about what happened yesterday. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg appeared before the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee to lay out the Biden administration's priorities for transportation. Now, Buttigieg actually brings a kind of celebrity status to this role. We haven't seen it previously in this position or in previous administrations. I know it's early, but what is your analysis or critique of him? I mean, how do you think he's doing so far?
I've been really blown away, frankly. He from a position where he didn't come from the federal government prior. He didn't have a heavy transportation background, although his platform as a candidate was excellent. He's really hit the ground running. If you watched his testimony yesterday, I think one of the things that really came through is that he is putting the time in to understand all of these issues at a really deep level. Whether it be something as like foreign repair stations or the big ticket items on investment, he is understanding the programs, the role the federal government plays, how they interact with states and local governments, and how workers are an essential part to all this stuff. So he's been really excellent so far.
You know, I would agree with you. I don't work in transportation, obviously, working in the media. I have to say, to me, he seems like the type of person who raises the bar on himself, and that, he knew that this was a big responsibility and that to be up for the task, he needed to be prepared. And he clearly came prepared. You know what I mean? He's definitely hit the ground running. A lot of people, I think, especially when they saw him when he was running for president, very intelligent guy, knows a lot of stuff. And definitely would be an asset in any department. But this is an area I think Joe Biden made a very wise pick with Pete Buttigieg in this position.
I completely agree. And you know what it says to me is somebody with his immense talent, his abilities as a communicator, his intellect. For me, it shows where the president's priorities are. And already we've seen a massive relief plan, and he's shifting now towards infrastructure and stimulus spending. I think he sees an opportunity here, as I do, to really make generational investments in our transportation and infrastructure and to lead in a way that we haven't seen in quite some time. And I think he chose somebody who is high profile and extremely adept to lead on those issues. And I think it shows that he's serious about doing things that frankly have been stalled for a long, long time.
And I think they won't be, not only because he's at the helm, but because more people, he and his celebrity status, if you will, put a spotlight on these issues. So let's talk about some of the issues. One of the first priorities raised during the hearing was implementing a number of unmet congressional mandates designed to make the aviation system safer for both workers and passengers. Can you talk to us about these mandates and why they haven't been implemented in the past, and what Transportation Secretary Buttigieg can do to change that situation?
Sure. And in aviation in particular, I mean, we saw two major pieces of legislation passed during the Trump administration. One was the FAA reauthorization in 2018. The other one was the certification reform bill that was done at the very end of last year. And in both cases, there are important safety mandates. There's things like flight attendant fatigue regulations that need to be updated, secondary cockpit barriers, which are the only remaining issue from the 9/11 Commission report that has not been implemented. And the fact that the FAA didn't take it upon themselves to do it alone shows the amount of pushback we got from the industry on that issue. But Congress stepped up and said you need to do it now. Foreign repair station oversight, where we have essentially two separate safety regimes for domestic repair stations and foreign repair stations that are operating, doing heavy maintenance on the same aircraft, U.S. certified aircraft. All of these things were done on a bipartisan basis because they are needed for safety. And, frankly, I don't know what the motivation is from the Trump administration to not implement them, other than perhaps it pushed back from the industry, or maybe it's just they were, allergic to regulation for the sake of regulation. But regardless, we have an opportunity now to do things that not only are needed from a safety perspective, but more importantly, they have bipartisan support. They were done in Republican-controlled Congresses and with Republican support across the board. So they can make a strong statement by acting early on these issues.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because transportation really isn't a partisan issue. I mean, both Democrats and Republicans need transportation, and both
Yeah.
Democrats and Republicans have constituents working within the transportation industry. But I understand there are other unmet mandates outside of the space of aviation. Could you tell me about these and also how they impact working people?
Yeah, one example, there was a part of the FAST Act, which was done in 2016, was a requirement for the federal government to play a larger role in protecting transit operators from assaults. And there was a rulemaking requirement that the Trump administration, frankly, just took a pass on. They said, this is up to local and state people to deal with. And we disagree with that strongly. We think there needs to be a strong federal role to set a standard that, whether it be the working environment, the operating environment within buses, whether it be, more standards and requirements across the board for how agencies are going to protect their employees, that will not only protect workers, but protect the public who are riding these buses and riding these trains. Another example is with crew size mandates for freight rail, where you have now trains that are upwards of 3 miles long, operating through communities, oftentimes carrying hazardous materials. And as we saw in Canada several years ago, I mean, there can be very
Yes.
tragic consequences with this stuff. Having two people operate these massive trains is not a big lift, and frankly, something that should be required. And the current DOT has an opportunity to make a statement that we are going to have a safety-focused agency now, and the federal government is going to be leading the charge on that.
With regard to the rest of the world, and I know sometimes Americans think, we're the best at everything, but not always the case. Do you think that do you know that other countries have some of these regulations when it comes to transportation?
Well, I don't have expertise in all the foreign laws, but I think we certainly, in many, especially in European countries, there are stronger labor laws, and there's more ability for the workers to have an input into their workplace environment, into their safety environment, and we don't see industries collapsing because workers have a larger voice. In the industries that I represent, we have probably the highest union density of any industry in the country with transportation, whether it be transit, rail, aviation. Freight rail is wall-to-wall union. Aviation is 90% union. And these are middle-class jobs, and these industries are doing quite well. So, well, outside the pandemic, I would suppose. So I think we are an example that shows that you can give workers more of a voice. You can give people more rights at the workplace and more ability to help shape their workplace environment. And it's not a business killing thing. This is about shared equity and shared participation in our economy.
We're going to be taking a break, but I want to remind you once again, we're talking with Greg Regan. He is he's president of the Transportation Trades Department, the TTD at AFL-CIO. And like I mentioned, check out their website. Go to ttd.org. You can find out more information there. Do that during the break. And on Twitter, be sure to follow them at TTD-AFL-CIO. I'm Leslie Marshall. You can follow me at Leslie Marshall on Facebook, facebook.com/Leslie Marshall, LinkedIn at Leslie Marshall, Instagram at Leslie Marshall Talker. And we're going to talk more about transportation, about Greg Buttigieg, about the Biden administration, about things that need to change and might change in this administration moving forward. Please don't go away.
If you miss Leslie on TV this week, catch up at lesliemarshallshow.com.
If you're worried your friend may be struggling, remember, you don't have to be there to be there.
You could say, how are you, or get a fake tattoo. You could ask with an app if it works for you. You could write them a text or knit them a sweater. If you can't be together, you could write them a letter. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking. You could chat on the game, kick off your flip-flops. You could ask on your couch while you binge watch. However you do it, you gotta ask a friend. And if they don't share, you can ask again. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking.
Reach out to a friend about their mental health. Learn how you can help at seizetheawkward.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and the JED Foundation.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean, and there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day Pennsylvania State Police attacked striking UE members at the gate of Westinghouse in East Pittsburgh. 200,000 UE members went on an industry-wide strike on January 15th for a $2 a day raise. They were on strike against the Big Three, GE, Westinghouse, and the electric division at GM. It was part of the post-war strike wave that brought millions out onto the picket lines nationwide. By the middle of March, the UE had settled with GM and GE, but 75,000 Westinghouse workers were still out on strike. Westinghouse initially refused to negotiate at all. When they made a first offer, they falsely claimed theirs matched the GE and GM agreements. Federal mediators withdrew from the case in frustration, stating the company had made negotiations impossible. Then, on this day, Allegheny County Sheriff Walter Monahan and Governor Edward Martin called in 800 state troopers. Some were on horseback, others on foot detail. Many troopers arrived in cars with machine guns and tear gas. They patrolled the picket lines and nearby streets and set up roadblocks leading to the Westinghouse gates. They began to forcibly disperse the crowd of 1,000 picketers. Then they ushered through several hundred non-production workers. Some were pelted with eggs, others were struck in the face by some of the women strikers. 3 UE leaders were arrested for refusing to shut down the sound system they used to blast staffers for crossing the picket lines. The state police stayed for the duration of the strike. To enforce injunctions against mass picketing and to ensure the crossing of picket lines. The strike finally ended after 115 days, with the strikers winning an 18-cent an hour raise. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Follow Leslie on Twitter. Just go to www.twitter.com/Leslie Marshall, and we'll be sure to share your tweets.
We are back with President of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO, Greg Regan. Like I said, on Twitter, follow them at TTD and TTD AFL-CIO, and also go to the website ttd.org. Greg, thank you for holding. Welcome back. Because I want to get everything in with time, just jumping right into the question. You had mentioned at the onset of the interview today, at the onset of the hour, that, the COVID relief bill. And now that Congress has passed and the president has signed a major COVID-19 relief bill, everyone's focus seems to be turning to infrastructure investment. And there is strong support among the American people, the voters, as well as both Democrats and Republicans for investing in our roads, our bridges, our ports, our airports, our schools. And we go on, we go water and national security and broadband. We know the needs are there. What will it take to finally get an infrastructure package across that finish line? And how can this kind of investment help the working people, the working class?
So one thing that's been lacking, frankly, is strong executive leadership on this issue. And that's something where the president has clearly showed that this is a priority, as I mentioned. I think he knows how important it is, not only for, I think he would have known it was important if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic and not needing the economic recovery that we do need. But we've had underinvested systems for years. But given the current situation, there is no better bang for the buck in terms of economic stimulus than investment in infrastructure and in transportation. So that is going to be a key part of our economic recovery for all Americans, is investing in all of this. I think there is a unique opportunity here, both with the political willpower and with the leadership that we have in place, to get the type of major investments that are needed in our country to correct for, frankly, the underinvestment we've had for decades. And we can accomplish things like completing Gateway in the Northeast Corridor. We can accomplish investing in our transit system so they're able to meet the demand and the needs of every community that they're intended to serve. And that includes a lot of disadvantaged communities. We need to make sure that we have modern airports and an Amtrak, a passenger rail system that frankly can stand up to the rest of the world, because we're well behind that, and it's because we haven't paid for it. So the fact that we have federal leadership now that understands it, the fact that we have a demonstrated need not only for new infrastructure modernizing, but for economic stimulus, because we are dealing with a once-in-a-generation crisis right now when it comes to this pandemic and the economic fallouts of it.
And also, I constantly say, these are job creators. This is a win-win, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. If you can bring jobs home or jobs back, or both jobs home and jobs back, to your state if you're a senator, or to your district if you're a House member, it always perplexes me greatly why there is any pushback or political partisanship or divide on any of these issues when there's so much support for repair of infrastructure, investment in infrastructure on both sides of the aisle, among the politicians as well as their constituents. So it just amazes me that we're still having this conversation. You know what I mean? We're not saying, now that has passed, what do you think we need to do next? We're still talking about getting this done.
And look at what the states are doing. I mean, a lot of states have increased their own gas tax, and it's not like people are losing their elections left and right because they supported that. In fact, the opposite is true, because people are willing to pay a little bit more when they see what the results are. If that means they're improving the roads and bridges in their community, if we're giving people more access to public transportation, all of these things are things that voters see and they care about, and they're willing to make the public investment into their government when they see the results of it. And for me, I think it's a win politically, and it's a win from a policy perspective.
I want to go back to the hearing yesterday, because during the hearing, a great deal of emphasis was placed on investing in our transit systems for obvious reasons. Secretary Buttigieg is committed to improving equity, and we know building out public transportation is a great way to do that. But many Americans still rely on cars to get around. Even in rural areas, less populated areas, more so, that don't have subways or buses in their area. Highways are still very valued and very used in those areas. And even, people who leave the city, to get from point A to point B, vacations, visit family. What kind of approach to infrastructure investment would you like to see from this administration? If Secretary Buttigieg called you and said, Greg, help me out here, how would you advise me to do this? What would you like to see this administration do and have an approach to with infrastructure investment?
Well, the Highway Trust Fund needs to be shored up. And the Highway Trust Fund does, and this was brought up in the hearing as well, I mean, that pays for both transit and roads and bridges in our country. So, but unfortunately, it's been operating on a 1994 budget, including to inflation, and we are constantly having to push general fund money into it to shore it up. So one thing that's been a challenge for a long time now is making sure that we have a sustainable funding source for the Highway Trust Fund. And that's going to, frankly, make it better for drivers all throughout the country. One of the challenges we face moving forward, however, is how do we make sure that all of the people that are using the system are paying equitably into it? As we have more fuel efficient cars with the internal combustion engines. And then especially as we move towards electric vehicles, if you're driving a Tesla right now, you're not paying into the Highway Trust Fund. You're not paying for the roads that you're driving on. So we are going to have to figure out a system that does this in a fair and equitable way, and one that invests in every mode across the country, whether it be roads and bridges, transit, rail. All of these areas need to have a sustainable federal funding source, and that's going to be the biggest challenge here.
Greg, can I tell you something? And I live in California, where we have a fair amount of electric vehicles on the road. You're the first person I heard mention that. Seriously. And people don't even think of that. Yeah. I'm not, if you're driving an electric vehicle, you're not paying into that system. And especially as we move toward having more and maybe total electric vehicles in our future someday, that's something that has to be looked at. That's very, very interesting. Because, there's going to be a time between point A and point B where we certainly have a hybrid of drivers who are using electric or gas fueled vehicles.
Yeah. And, it's funny. Winston Churchill, almost a century ago, proposed the first gasoline tax in the UK back when he was not prime minister. I think he was the Admiralty of the Navy or something like that at the time. But he proposed that as a sustainable way of paying for the roads that he knew was going to be necessary here. And we're at a similar point right now where we have new technologies and they present new policy questions and new concerns. So how we draft that in this year and the coming few years is going to really set the tone for a long time about how we as a country attack these public needs and needs that we all share.
We have about a minute left, although I would love to talk to you more. I'd like to give you that last minute and to share with those listening and watching, something maybe that I didn't touch upon, a point that you'd like to hit home.
Yeah, I do think we are, I said it before, but I think we have a once in a generation opportunity here to really reset how we view our public infrastructure and our public transportation. This is a chance where we can, really create a new direction for federal policy. And it starts with the big investments, but it also starts with the safety environment, and one where we are rethinking about what are the goals, or what do we expect from our federal government in terms of their, how they're serving constituents, how they're serving working people, and as we challenge, as we tackle new challenges, whether it be automated vehicles, electric vehicles, the new, gig economy type of workers, making sure that we set the tone that they're going to be worker first and safety first is an important opportunity right now.
Well, Greg, you did a great job. We'd love to have you come back on again. Good to know we share a friend there at AFL-CIO. And thank you for being with us, taking the time on this Friday. Once again, follow them on Twitter at TTD AFL-CIO. Greg, as I mentioned, Greg Regan is president of the Transportation Trades Department, the TTD, at the AFL-CIO. And go to their website to find out more, ttd.org. That's ttd.org. I'm Leslie Marshall. Quick break. When we come back, second half of the hour with our second guest. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay with us. And Greg, once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Can I touch this? Where does sand come from? Is this tree good for climbing? What happens if I mix these two things together? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Storing your guns securely is the best way to prevent family fire, including unintentional shootings. For more information on safe gun storage and ways to keep your family safe, visit endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org.
What do we keep in the attic? What's this thing called? Can I ride my bike backwards?
Like I said, kids are curious. It's up to us to keep them safe. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
In corporate speak, there are no, quote, job cuts. Instead, firings are blandly referred to as employment adjustments. Now, though, corporate wordsmiths will need a whole new thesaurus of euphemisms, for masses of job cuts are coming for employees in the higher echelons of the corporate structure. Don't look now, but an unanticipated result of the ongoing pandemic is that it has given cover for CEOs to speed up the adoption of highly advanced RPAs, robotic process automation, to replace employees once assumed to be immune from displacement. As one analyst told a New York Times reporter, with RPA, you can build a bot that costs $10,000 a year and take out 2 to 4 humans. Prior to the COVID crisis, many top executives feared a public backlash if they pushed automation too far too fast. But ironically, the economic collapse caused by the pandemic has so discombobulated the workplace and diverted public attention that corporate bosses have been emboldened to rush ahead. While the nationwide shutdown of offices and furloughing of employees has caused misery for millions, one happy purveyor of RPA systems notes that it has, quote, massively raised awareness among executives about the variety of work that no longer requires human involvement. He cheerfully declares, we think any business process can be automated, advising corporate bosses that half to 2/3 of all the tasks being done at their companies can be done by machines. This is Jim Hightower saying, conventional corporate wisdom blithely preaches that all new technologies create more jobs than they kill. But even these Pollyannish preachers are now conceding that this robotic automation of white-collar jobs is being imposed so widely, suddenly, and stealthily that losses will crush any gains.
And we're back on Leslie Marshall. Happy Friday. Welcome or welcome back. Only True Democracy and Talk. Thank you for listening to us on radio, on stream, on podcast. Also for watching us on Twitter's Periscope, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and LinkedIn Live. Second half of the hour and our second guest, second topic. We have Mansur Shams with us. I think Mansur's been on the show before. He is a Muslim American U.S. Marine veteran. He's a public speaker, and he is a term member on the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR. He's also the founder of MuslimMarine.org, and he uses that platform to bridge gaps, create cross-cultural understanding, and counter hate, bigotry, and Islamophobia through education, conversation, and dialogue. He endeavors to unify an increasingly divided world in our nation, and the tagline for MuslimMarine.org is unifying people through conversation. His Twitter handle is at Mansoor T. Shams. That's MansoorTshams. Follow him on Twitter. I do. You get a lot of information. And I really, really enjoy your tweets, Mansoor. Thank you for joining us, and welcome on this Friday.
Thank you so much for having me.
Here's, speaking of Twitter, a tweet, and I think I've shared with you before, either in direct message on Twitter or the last time you were on, off air, on air. I'm married to a Muslim. Yes. My married name is Muslim. I won't share that with everybody, but my last name. But, I come from this from a different angle. I don't know what it's like to walk in Muslim shoes, but I do know what it's like to be married to a Muslim, have a brown son I adopted from Pakistan at the ED Foundation, and husband and children who have things said to them or about them or our family based on that. So I have a personal connection to the interest in your tweets as well. And speaking of your tweets, like I said, people should follow you. It's awesome. And yesterday you tweeted, quote, "In the spirit of education, an AR-15 uses the same bullet my M16 used when I served in the Marines. It shoots across 8 football fields and annihilates anything it hits. It's a weapon of war that belongs on the battlefield. P.S. Looking forward to turning mine in the day America bans it." Interesting and powerful. So before we get into anything Muslim, let's talk Marines and guns and weapons. Now, that's something I don't know anything about, except I was saying anything about, except for research. I don't have that personal connection, but you do. When you hear people talk about the Second Amendment, which was certainly set up by our founding forefathers for a well-regulated militia, and people have the right to bear arms to protect their families or to go hunting. Are these types of weapons, these types of assault rifles, the AR-15 as an example, are they necessary to kill Bambi? Are they necessary to protect your family?
Well, I've had the privilege to sort of travel all across this nation. So I understand, many sides of the argument. So what I've always tried to do is to give a practical argument that resonates with everyone. Although you'll always have people that will say, the haters, I guess you can say, or the trolls. But I try to connect in different ways with everyone. So I've had the opportunity to visit where the California, West Coast, where you're at. And I've actually even driven from California into Nevada. And for me, that was a new experience because I had never done, I obviously had never done that before. But in between, I saw many areas that were these very small towns, felt very uncomfortable and unfamiliar compared to the place where I live in Maryland. And so I've also, spoken at the University of Louisville. So that's Kentucky. I've gone to Wisconsin. I've seen different parts of the country, so I can understand why a weapon, a gun for self-defense may be necessary. Totally get it. I've never been about banning guns. I've only been talking about banning weapons that are literally military type weapons. As I mentioned in that tweet, can shoot across 8 football fields, a half a mile plus. Now imagine from my home where I'm at, and me having a weapon in my hand and shooting that far out, and the other person not even knowing whatever even hit them. That's the type of weapons that are right now in the hands of everyday Americans under this whole Second Amendment, debacle. Now, what people don't understand is that the AR-15 is also very unique. It's a very high-powered weapon. Okay, there's a reason why you rarely ever hear of any survivors from this gun. Why is that? Because when you shoot this, when that round hits someone, it not only hits them, but it explodes and sort of expands, leaving a wound about this big. You're done. You're finished the moment it hits you. And its ability to travel so far. Now, since many of these sort of shootings have happened in, unfortunately, schools, shopping malls, grocery stores. So imagine an aisle in Walmart. A handgun versus an AR-15, completely different game. If you just look at what the Colorado shooter did, unfortunately, same thing. His ability to shoot someone 50 yards away with accuracy is very easy versus a handgun. It's a very dangerous weapon.
It's interesting because I was just going to ask you that to give us an example. So the AR-15 versus a handgun, it shoots farther. You don't need to be a sharpshooter necessarily, a sniper, and have that accuracy. A handgun might wound you and not kill you. AR-15, you're going to be dead because of that exploding inside. And forgive my ignorance, even though AR doesn't stand for assault rifle, are these semi-automatic weapons putting out bullets at a faster speed than a handgun? I assume the answer is yes.
So you can look at it from, when you ask this sort of question, when I was in the Marines, I shot both the M16 and I shot a handgun. Now, there's a reason why when I was shooting an M16, we were practicing for 200, 300, and 500 yards, okay? There's a reason why when I was shooting with my handgun, it was, I think, 25 and 50 yards. That was the sort of accuracy we were looking at to, get our marksmanship skills straight. So just think about that for a second, right? 200, 300, 500 yards, right? Very different ball game. And then a handgun, you're practicing at 25 and 50 yards, much closer range. As far the second question that you asked about its ability to sort of fire. Now, yes, in the Marine Corps, these are small nuances. People play tricks with these words, and that's very unfortunate. But the American public needs to understand that the difference between my M16 was me being able to hold my trigger down and it firing nonstop. The difference with the weapons that are allowed in everyday society, battlefield type weapons, AR-15s, you have to hit the trigger each time. Now, that is not that much of a difference. I mean, I understand in war. I mean, obviously you don't want to be doing this, but some people can go like this very quickly. If you know where I'm going with this,
yes,
it is a very, very dangerous weapon. I will repeat again. It is not about me being against anyone in America having ownership of a gun. We're a population of 300 million. It takes me 5.5 hours to 6 hours to travel from the East Coast to the West Coast. It's a humongous country. There are parts of this country that are, where I would feel comfortable. I would need it because I would feel safer. But no, you don't need an AR-15 to do that.
Yeah, that's my thing too. When they say Democrats are coming for your guns, as a Democrat, I'm like, I love our Constitution. My favorite is the First Amendment, not the Second. But I do, if somebody wants to have a gun, fine. But also, what about the rights of people that don't want guns or don't want you and your guns around me and my kids who don't want guns, as an example? The city of Boulder, Colorado, actually barred assault weapons in 2018. And they did it as a way to prevent mass shootings like the one that killed 17 at a high school in Parkland, Florida. 10 days after that ban was blocked in court this month was when we saw this tragedy in that city where 10 people were killed at the supermarket this past Monday when the gunman opened fire. And announcing the arrest, and we had more information today. There will be 10 counts of first-degree murder and more coming for attempted murder. The suspected gunman, who's 21 years of age, like I said, charged with 10 counts of murder in the first degree. And the investigators determined that he had purchased a Ruger AR-556 pistol on March 16th. There were no other details released as to when or how he obtained the AR-15 style firearm, and he obtained it 6 days before the shooting. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with our guest. We're going to be back with you. Stick with us. We're talking with Mansour Shams, a Muslim American U.S. Marine veteran, public speaker, and term member on the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR. On Twitter, follow him at Mansour T. Shams, MANSOORTSHAMS. Back after this. Don't go away.
America, your children have an amazing superpower. They can help save lives by not having play dates. That's right. By replacing get-togethers with virtual play dates and video chats, they can help slow the evil spread of germs. And if your superheroes do go outside, make sure they continue their superhero wing by staying 6 feet away from others to protect everyone in America land. Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council. America, Your children have an amazing superpower. That's right. They can help save lives by simply washing their hands. Just 20 seconds of thorough hand washing after they've coughed or sneezed or been outside can help fight against the dastardly spread of germs. Armed with only soap and water and hands, your superhero can protect you, your family, and everyone out there in America land. Amazing! Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council.
He was the heart of your family, and he taught you our history. He helped you fix your first flat. He was the best backyard DJ around. And every time he'd tell a story, he'd own the room. But now more than ever, he may feel alone. Today, older adults and their loved ones are struggling to connect in a time when connection has never been more important. But there is something we can do. Embrace our older loved ones through StoryCorps Connect. With StoryCorps Connect, you can honor seniors remotely with an interview about their life. Every interview will be archived at the Library of Congress, becoming part of American history, so that years from now, future generations can listen in.
All right, Grandpa, what's one piece of advice you have for me?
Just 3 words, sweetheart. Live with courage. The man that had the best stories still has plenty of stories to tell. So connect virtually and share the conversation of a lifetime at StoryCorpsConnect.org/AARP. Connect, honor, share. StoryCorps Connect. A message from AARP, StoryCorps, and the Ad Council.
Welcome to Code Whack, your podcast on America's broken healthcare system and how Medicare for All could help. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. What struggles do residents of the state of Washington face when it comes to accessing healthcare? We spoke to Sean Kavanaugh, campaign director for Whole Washington, to find out.
So there was this one woman and her husband, and he caught a disease. His company let him go. He didn't have health insurance, and now his job that he now has doesn't provide health insurance, and they fall into that income where they make too much for aid but too little to afford an Obamacare plan, and so they're constantly kind of like living in fear that he could get sick. And it's a lung issue, so also in fear of getting COVID. Hearing their story makes me sad that they have to live in that fear, and so many others also do too. There was this one woman, now this was a long time ago, but they didn't have health insurance. And she was pregnant, she had some pain. The doctors wouldn't see her because she didn't have health insurance, and she ended up losing her first child. A couple years later, she's in Canada. She has pain. She tells a friend, no, I'm not going to, I have pain, but I can't go see the doctor. I'm like, what are you talking about? We got universal health care. Go see the doctor. First time, but because they saw the doctor, they were able to treat it. And now they have a sweet child.
Get the full Code Whack story on ProgressiveVoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code Whack wherever you find your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time, stay healthy.
If you missed Leslie on TV this week, catch up at lesliemarshallshow.com.
And we're back on Leslie Marshall. Welcome or welcome back. Mansour Sham is a Muslim American U.S. Marine veteran, public speaker, and a term member, on the Council on Foreign Relations. It is Friday, CFR. Please check out MuslimMarine.org. On Twitter, follow him at Mansour T. Shams, MansoorTshams. And thank you for being with us today, Mansour. I wanted to talk about that, not just the type of weapon and not just the Second Amendment, but why you think a ban might be necessary. And I think this time frame can speak to that because, where's that cooling off period? I know some states have, like 30 days between when you can register and buy. And some, gun shops have said people sometimes don't come back. Maybe somebody was planning to hurt themselves or someone else and change their mind. So could you speak to those two issues?
Look, the bottom line is that to get one of these weapons is very easy. Okay, I can give you my own experience. I walked into a gun shop. It took me about 15 minutes. Okay, to walk out one. This was several years ago, but this is happening even today. A thought occurred to me during this discussion. Another challenge that we have, and I think that maybe the American public may not be aware of, but there's very little regulation on this. So a few years back, I used to try to take some friends out and say, let's go to the gun range. And I would just go online and I would order the rounds specific to my gun. And kid you not, it was shocking to me the first time I did it. I ordered it was like 5 or 8 of us, so I wanted everybody to get 20 rounds off at the range or something like this, right? 500 rounds, okay, or 1,000 rounds, I can't remember the specific number, don't quote me on this, came to my house within 2 to 3 days via UPS or FedEx, and they were sitting in front of my house. No regulation, anyone could have done that. This is how, so it is shocking to me. It is shocking to me that in the United States of America in the 21st century, not only can you go and own a weapon like this, but you can go and have more rounds available to you than I had access to as a Marine when I was sort of on the range, which were highly regulated. Another point that I've also always tried to remind people is I didn't have my weapon on me all the time. When I was not in training, it was locked up in the armory, right? And it was only given to you either in training or if you're sent to battle. That's it. That's the only time you have that weapon. Here, an 18-year-old or 17, whoever it is, can just go in and they have this weapon. They can just, one day they lose their mind and boom, they can just go in and just shoot everyone.
In addition to the AR-15, he had, as I mentioned, that AR-556 pistol. And what they're saying in Colorado, at least the Boulder City attorney, Tom Carr, who doesn't want to talk about this, is the city's code on assault weapons actually, they say the AR-556 or 556 would have been included in the ban that was recently overturned less than 2 weeks before this heinous incident. Can you speak to us about that weapon? Are you familiar with the AR-556?
I'm conceptually familiar with it. You can call it a smaller version. This is how the gun industry is so tricky, it's a smaller version of a longer AR-15 rifle. So if the AR-15 is like this big, right? This is like this big, which is actually even more dangerous to a certain extent because you can hide it so easily. I mean, you can just put it right here, and then it gives you the same abilities, perhaps almost like an AR-15. You can put it against your shoulder. You can lock it in. These are very dangerous sort of maneuvers for anyone to be able to have in a situation where they're going out and about to slaughter and murder people. So yeah, it's no different. It's just a smaller version of it.
So it's fair to say it's modeled after the AR-15.
Correct.
And that's what they do to get around all these regulations and loopholes and even bans. What would you say to somebody playing devil's advocate that says you can buy those on the black market? It doesn't matter if they ban them.
Look, we have to start somewhere as a country. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can get on in the gray market or on the black market. I have little to say to them. I understand that market exists, but right now the conversation is about what are our laws doing to protect everyday citizens. How do we stop making it so easy where anyone can have accessibility to these weapons of war essentially in their hands and go and murder innocent lives all over this country? It is beyond my understanding that how many Americans have died. They say that over in this year alone, in 2021, over 100+ mass shootings have already taken place. I mean, I just don't. It is beyond my understanding where the American public just does not get it. That why are we all coming united around this issue and saying, you know what, if there's something wrong, we got to fix this. And I hope that will happen with voices like mine and others.
We have less than 5 minutes in the interview, so I do want to get to this. I saw the man being taken out of Boulder with his pants and no shirt and handcuffs. Press reported white man. Yeah. Then everybody hears his name, and everybody hears he's from Syria. And you and I are both on Twitter, and what do we see trending? Islam, Muslim, radical fundamentalist, Islamic terrorism, and the list goes on. You are a Muslim man. I know how I feel married to a Muslim man with this. You are a Muslim man. How does it make you feel when there's a rush to judgment every single time that an individual is of Middle Eastern or Arab descent or has a Muslim name, that immediately there, and also trending ISIS, right? That there's a connection to ISIS, and that just there's such nasty negative Islamophobic rhetoric out there. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, look, it's painful. Specifically, in my case, a guy who actually served this nation with his life. I served during the 9/11 era and during the while the Iraq War was taking place. I just came back from Friday prayer, and I had mentioned to one of the guys that I was going to be speaking to you, and he said something. And I said, you know what, that's a great story. I'm going to share that. And he said that I came 1 month after, from Pakistan, about 1 month after 9/11 had taken place. And when he started going to school, he said every single day I was called Osama bin Laden. Okay, he said people literally would roll up paper and throw it at me. This guy, and I'm just sitting there and I'm listening to this guy and shaking my head. And he said one day, like I think after about a month or a month and a half after of constant bullying, he took a chair and he just picks it up and throws it across the sort of the room. Of course, he had to go to the principal's office and deal with that sort of situation. I think what we often sort of as a society, and this is not just about Islamophobia, and just in general that we don't look at, is what are the things that are leading up to these sort of situations. So for imagine someone like myself. We look at bullying. Okay, I see this as a classic definition of bullying. I don't know if you remember a couple of years back, there was a story of the gymnast who were abused by this
Yes,
doctor.
absolutely.
And I remember right at that court hearing, when the sentencing was taking place, the father of one of the gymnasts said, "Your Honor, can I jump over and just have 30 seconds with this gentleman?" Right? The judge said, "No, I can't allow that." The guy leaps over and tries to tackle the doctor, and of course, security jumped in. And it was a father who couldn't understand how what had just taken place. And I think we separate this sort of stuff that's taking place in our nation, whether it's any child being bullied or whether it's Islamophobia, the effect that it has on one person. For one person, it might be picking up throwing a chair. One person, it might be depression. And for another person, it might be picking up a gun, unfortunately. So we really have to tackle these issues. We have to have these conversations and treat everyone with respect and dignity, which unfortunately isn't happening in this country. Because when we start talking Islamophobia, he's a Muslim, then you're painting everybody with a broad brush. And I only need to go back to January 6th and what happened there. I know that if it was a bunch of people who look like me and who are Muslim, the country would be in a very different state right now. And it's almost as if we've forgotten what happened on January 6th, a 9/11 equivalent event that just took place in 2021. So we do have this hypocrisy that's taking place across this country, and it is destroying lives, literally.
I don't know if it was you. It was somebody after January 6th, and maybe on January 6th, that said they're escorting them out and letting them go. If and I think one black guy said, if it had been black guys, are you kidding me? And then some other guy said, and if he had been named Muhammad, they would have had snipers on helicopters outside the building gunning them down. And that's true. That's a reality. Although we don't know a motive in Boulder, we are hearing from family and friends that there was something off. He was seeing people and hearing voices. Yeah. He never yelled Allahu Akbar. Not everyone does, but usually when we see some kind of ISIS-related connected terrorist attack, that is done. And I agree with you. We just have to stop the jumping to conclusions and the stereotyping, based on religion or skin color or someone's name.
That's right. And I think that another thing that everyone needs to remember, if anyone, forget the faith, if anyone has the audacity to pick up a weapon and start shooting people, there's nothing normal about that.
Right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what their name is. It doesn't matter what their color is. And everybody says the motive. The motive matters, but what matters more are the victims. And like you said, not just the motive, but what led to that person doing that. What can we as a society do to stop that? You are awesome. We will have you back. It's good to see you, not just on Twitter. Mansour Sham, Muslim American U.S. Marine veteran, public speaker, and term member on the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR. Please check out muslimmarine.org and do follow him on Twitter. His tweets are awesome, at Mansour T. Sham, MansoorTshams. I'm Leslie Marshall. Have a great weekend. And thanks, Marky Mark Ramal.